And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome tonight Dr. Tammy Euliano, in real life anesthesiologist, here to tell us about Fatal Intent, her debut medical thriller, the first in the Dr. Kate Downey series. Tammy, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about Fatal Intent.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate the invitation.
Yay!
Fatal Intent is shockingly about an anesthesiologist, and a female anesthesiologist at that. And she is surprised to learn that some of her elderly patients have passed away soon after she has taken care of them. And she's concerned by this and brings it up to the surgeon, who is less concerned and actually ends up blaming her, and it ends up sort of getting out of control. And she's then compelled to figure out what's going on and why these patients are passing away. And I don't know how much to give away, but it ends up being a pretty big conspiracy that she and her Aunt who is her great aunt, German great aunt, who is a little bit hilarious, and a medical student and the son of one of the victims, end up sort of teaming up to solve this mystery.
Ooh, well, you have earned some incredible praise from people like Lee Child, Tess Gerritsen, the list goes on and on. So we're going to get into every delicious detail. But first, I just want to welcome everyone who's watching with us. We're broadcasting live to 6 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So, hey, wherever you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. And if you've been here before, you know how this works. You get to ask the author anything. So ask Dr. Tammy about this mysterious other female doctor that she's writing about, Dr. Kate Downey, whose patients are dying. Ask her about being an anesthesiologist. Ask her about being a writer. Ask her about the research process. We got a lot of questions going, so just get them going in the comments, and I'll get them right over to her. Melissa Watson, welcome to the conversation. She's saying, good day, Sarah and Tammy. Melissa's joining us live from Australia.
With a dog. That's most important.
With her cute little dog. Yes, we're big dog people here. Melissa, welcome to the conversation. Always a pleasure to have you, ma'am. So Tammy, oops, I lost you there for a second. So Tammy, let's start with some of the incredible praise that you have earned. So Lee Child, who I was thrilled to host in November, raves. This book is terrific. Congratulations on that. He goes on to say, to compliment your delicious suspense, your done that authenticity, your great main character in Dr. Kate Downey. And he says, we want to see more of her. Congratulations on that. So let's talk about how you created this delicious suspense.
Oh, wow. Pretty much I thought through the idea for the story came easily. It was something that has always intrigued me, is end of life and how people should die, and that sort of quandary without really knowing what the right answer was. And so creating a story where that takes center stage, I needed my character to be torn, and I needed other characters, I thought, on other sides of the issue to have equally compelling arguments, to disagree and then create suspense over what's going to happen next regarding what turns out to be her husband, who's in a coma, basically, and arguments between his brother and her, and then the main bad guy or girl that is trying to theoretically help people who are suffering end their lives, but not in the way you'd expect it to happen.
Well, Melissa wants to know, and I'm guessing she's not the only one. Tammy, did you draw from any of your own experiences? We ask nervously.
I did not. Somebody asked me, can you really, do it exactly as the book says? And I know not that way. But actually several of the scenes, especially where Kate is faced with controversies and difficulties with patients, pretty much all of those are based on experiences I had during my training. And most everything I've written has some basis in something I've seen or witnessed or heard about in a conference. It gives me a nice seed to begin with, something I can picture and play off of.
So I was intrigued by all of the medical scenes. And Dr. Kate Downey is in a teaching hospital. So she not only is doing the anesthesia for the surgeries, but she's also teaching young residents how to do it. And sometimes they get it wrong. And does that happen? Do they go down the wrong tube, or they don't do the anesthesia right?
She asks nervously.
Yeah.
So we are present at all, at all critical moments. The attending is physically present, but later that person we're training is going to be doing it by themselves. So they have to learn how to do it. So we used to say, see one, do one, teach one. And we don't really say that anymore. Now we see 3 or 4, do 15 or 20, and then maybe we'll let you do it without us, with our hands on your hands. So it's a very graded turnover of responsibility to residents. And these days, medical students can't do hardly anything. When I trained, medical students had a lot more autonomy. So it's very safe to go to an academic institution. We're very careful about what we allow the residents to do.
So do you train residents?
I do, yes.
Okay. Courtney, welcome to the conversation. She says, hello, lovely ladies. I'm so happy to be here with Dr. Tammy. She loves your new book.
Thank you.
Yay. So Courtney is a bookstagrammer, and she actually, and she's also a moderator of my favorite one of my 2 favorite book groups on Facebook, which is Bitchy Bookworms, clocking in at 110,000 members.
Wow.
And Courtney is Caffeine and Repeat. I'm going to drop a link to her Instagram right here. And she actually messaged ahead of time to tell me how much she loved this book. Tammy, she said that it just sucked her in, and that she devoured it. So Courtney, let us know in the comments what you loved about this book, and everybody follow Courtney here. Here is her Instagram handle, Caffeine and Repeat. Tammy, let's talk about some of your other amazing praise. So Tess Gerritsen, who was on the show last July, is coming back on the show with her next Rizzoli and Isles this June. She raved. Fatal Intent rings with thrilling authenticity. Tammy Euliano writes with convincing authority, immersing us in a world that only a doctor knows. So congratulations on that fabulous review. How do you think how did you balance giving us enough information to immerse us, but not making us feel like we were in a medical school class? How did you find that?
That's a really good question. And if you read one of the early editions, it's way more on the medical school book novel. It's on the wrong end. The way I did it is really, in the end, is really what I do when I'm teaching residents is I brought in a medical student. So I created Jan, a medical student who wouldn't understand the terminology. And so it's reasonable for Kate to explain to her what's going on in non-doctorese. But it would be very unrealistic if a doctor told another doctor, sort of as you know, Bob, as you know, when the heart does not have enough oxygen, it can have it, right? I mean, that wouldn't make any sense if it was 2 doctors talking to each other. So that's where Jen came in and was my relief for that. And in real life, I'll do that. I'll bring a medical student around so that I can tell a resident something by telling the medical student, because I do mostly obstetric anesthesia, my patients are wide awake, and it would be unnerving to them to hear me tell the resident what to do. So I tell the medical student what the resident's going to do, and then they do it.
So enter Jen, the type A overdoer, good doobie. As a type A, good doobie, overdoer, straight A student myself, I was totally getting Jen. She just wants to get it right. And then of course contrasted with some slackers, some less motivated students in the class. Were those personality types based on students that you've
they're sort of amalgamations of students, but sadly, there are some of those, do the bare minimum and hope to slide by kind of kids. And I try to motivate them in positive ways when possible. And I don't always succeed, but yeah, it's so wonderful when we work with kids. I call them kids. They're not really kids, who are really in tune and want to learn and are excited to take care of patients, and recognize what a privilege it is to have the jobs that we do.
And Dr. Kate's not afraid to fail somebody if they
No.
if they are pulling their weight. Anissa Joy, welcome to the conversation. She's a bookstagrammer as well. And she says, hello, Sarah and Tammy. I am excited to hear more about this book. Anissa blogs over on Instagram, does a lot of big things with friends and fiction. Anissa, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Melissa saying she is excited to read a thriller from a doctor, as I'm sure we'll get some authentic inside info. Right, Melissa? Isn't that the best part of reading a book, where the person, yes, of course, has done their research, but they know what they're talking about, so that you can have confidence as a reader that you're not just getting swept up in a world, but the world is factually accurate. I nerd out about that too. I feel you, girl. I love that too. Courtney's saying, I loved her writing style, how captivating, and even how she explained things so beautifully. The thrill and the mystery was so genuine and wonderful. Is there another book in the works, perhaps? Courtney, great question. Dr. Tammy, give us the skinny.
There is. The second one will come out from Ocean View in January. We're still working on the cover, but the arcs are due very soon. It's called Misfire. It's featuring the same main cast of characters with a few new ones. And then I'm working on the third in the series right now. I have a couple other books that have not sold yet, but also that are medical thrillers, a little more Michael Crichton-ish than this series. But hopefully I'll find a place for those soon.
Ooh, I love that. And if anybody wants to check out Courtney, aka Caffeine and Repeats, 5-star review for Tammy, I'm going to put it right here in the comments so you can go check it out as well. Courtney, thanks for the question. Thanks for your presence. And thank you for the great review. Melissa is saying, what a fascinating job you have. All the women. Thank you.
Yeah, I tell the residents every day I have the best job in the world taking care of pregnant women. It's a privilege, and having been through it 3 times myself, I recognize the value of my job. And yeah, it's wonderful. It can also be heartbreaking, but it's almost always just a real wonderful opportunity to be near women and make their one of the most important events in their lives as special as possible. I get to practice my photography skills and.
Yeah. I just want to make sure I understand. So you're an anesthesiologist, but you only do obstetrics. So pregnant.
Not only, but mostly.
So does that mean you're doing the epidural?
Yes, the epidurals and anesthesia for C-sections and those
right,
kinds
of course.
Things. Yeah.
Okay, excellent, very cool. So did you always know you wanted to be an anesthesiologist? I mean, that's so specific.
I'd never heard of them before. I started medical school. I don't think I'd never had surgery. And they don't feature very highly in any medical dramas. Not that I watched those either, but no, I fell into it because I had an engineering background. And when I started medical school, I pretty quickly decided I didn't really know that I wanted to be a doctor, and I was thinking about quitting, and I ran across Dr. Michael Good, who was inventing a full-scale human patient simulator. So it was engineering plus physiology plus a little bit of robotics in the pre-robotics era, because this was back in the late 80s, early 90s. And so I got started on that project and fell in love with that, which took me to anesthesia, which fascinated me. And then once I started I really loved OB as well, but I didn't think I wanted to be an obstetrician. So I just combined the two, and it's worked out great for 25 years.
Wow, very, very cool. Readers got to read. Welcome to the conversation. Oh, hey, Shay, that's you. She's saying, I just joined a few minutes ago. What was some of the feedback? Oh, great question. What was some of the feedback from other doctors or even other doctors that are also fiction writers? Yeah, give us a scoop.
The physicians have been just amazing. Everybody that I work with, of course, what are they going to tell me? But they've enjoyed it. And I've gotten lots of feedback from other anesthesiologists saying, thank you for finally showing people what we do and that we actually have a role in a hospital. And so that's been really nice. Even I sort of portray a surgeon as a prototypical, not especially nice person, but the surgeons that have talked to me about reading it haven't gotten upset about that, which is nice. I've gotten a lot of very positive feedback. What's interesting is occasionally somebody will say something is inaccurate about my scene, and I'll go, actually, I do this for a living, and it's not from other doctors. It's from people who go, well, I've seen it on TV, and that's not how it works. And you go, oh, TV is not quite accurate.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So a reader will confront you about your inaccurate scene, and then you, Dr. Tammy, will have to educate them on the accuracy of your scene. Wow. Okay. All right. So that is fascinating. Thanks. We're getting a lot of LOLs up on the screen. So did any of the doctors say, we don't want you to tell this, please don't?
No, I have not had any of that, although I did have one very funny thing that one of the, I don't know how to say this without giving it away, but a person who turns out to be a bad guy, I happened to use the name of someone who had the same career and posted that he didn't appreciate me listing him as a bad guy. But it was a common name. It wasn't like,
interesting.
It was actually pretty hilarious that I just randomly picked a name and a career of somebody who actually had that name and career. But
so you're like Bob Smith, killer anesthesiologist, and Bob Smith in Iowa was not happy. Okay.
Exactly. And I think he was kidding. I'm not 100% sure, but no, I did have one of my colleagues say that I should. So I set this in a academic teaching hospital in North Central Florida that I named university, but it is not University of Florida's teaching hospital, sort of. I didn't ever say it was my hospital, but if people who know my hospital, where Kate walks around and stuff, they recognize scenes. I call it by a different city name, everything else. So it's, according to attorneys, that's all you really need to do to protect yourself and protect the hospital. But one of my colleagues said, I really ought to take Kate somewhere else and have her leave town for a little while. So she is going on a mission trip in book 3. I did a mission trip to Haiti once a few years ago. So she's going to go to the same place I went. And
well, Readers Gotta Read is laughing along with us at this guy who's not happy that he shares the name of a potential not so nice guy in your book. Thank you so much for the great question, and Dr. Tammy, thank you for the great answer. So when you referenced the surgeons a minute ago, sometimes surgeons, it seems like, aren't the friendliest, warmest people. Why do you think that is? Why do they have this reputation, and why is it kind of true?
We had a really interesting talk about that just the other day. Do jerks choose surgery, or does surgery turn nice people into jerks because of the really brutal training?
Yeah.
And I would say in the last 10 years, it's gotten so much better. There's so much less tolerance for bad behavior in the operating room. We don't see people throwing instruments and swearing as much as we did during my first 15 years of practice. They get fired, or we used to send them to personality school to talk about anger management and how to play nice in the sandbox. So it's gotten much, much better. And I know a lot of surgeons who I just very much respect and enjoy working with. But it's fun to create the one that I had, back in the day, who is much more, self-centered and unwilling to admit ever an error. But it's a bad way to take care of patients, and we don't see it near as much.
Okay, good. Okay, well, we're glad that there's less throwing of the tools across the room. That's really good to know. Courtney saying, "I just love that you're incorporating previous experiences with your life and your job into your books. It makes it so much more readable." Oh, interesting. I like that you're tying that to a readability factor, Courtney. Thank you for that. Really cool insight. Tammy, any response to that?
I've had a lot of fun talking to non-medical people and people who are, paramedical. So they were, a nursing assistant, but they were in a nursing home, so they were never in an operating room, that sort of stuff. And getting their perspective on how much medical detail is enjoyable and at what point does it become overkill. And of course, everybody has a different opinion. But the fact that you find it readable is thrilling to me, obviously. And you're right, it's a fine line between how far to go into the detail and when to turn it off, and also repetition. Some people will say, but I don't remember that fact, and you need to repeat it. And other people will say, you already told me that, I don't want to hear it again. So it can be very challenging, and that's where beta readers and critique groups are very helpful.
Dr. Tammy, you shared that you just joined a new critique group, your third. What are your parameters for finding a group? What are you looking for from them? How has that helped your writing?
When I started, I joined a local critique group, and that did not go well. What I've learned is, at least for me, having people in a similar genre is very helpful. So I don't read a lot of romance, so I can't read somebody's romance and tell them where they have a problem. And when I read somebody's literary something or other, I'm like, nothing's happened yet, and we're in chapter 12. And well, that's what I wrote. So my feedback is not useful. So instead, it's nice to work with other thriller writers. So through International Thriller Writers, I've formed a group, which is wonderful. They're incredibly well written, well read, and so their feedback is extremely useful. And then I also have a group through Mystery Writers of America that are also just amazing people who we only turn in 2,500 words at a time, but in an hour they'll send me feedback that is just really insightful about where I have weaknesses, and also positives, which is nice to hear, where they say, oh, this is great, I like this fact, or wow, this is too much, I had to take a nap.
Have you gotten the nap comments? Were you like, oh crap, I better tighten that up, or not so much?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. The comment I'm getting right now is in my third book that I need to get moving. I need to get to the mystery sooner, because there's too much. I'm sort of wrapping up book 2 and starting book 3 all at the same time, and I need to wrap up book 2 faster. You're always wondering, in a series, people need to be able to pick them up out of order, and so
Right.
you don't want to spend too much time on the previous book, but yet people who've read them in order kind of like that inside knowledge of referential to the previous books. And so deciding how much to do that without boring the people who read them in order, by giving them previous information, it's a challenge. And I really love, there's so many great resources on the internet from amazing authors and webcasts you can listen to that give you hints on how to do those things, and plenty of books about it.
Excellent. Another rave review that you received was from a New York Times bestselling author Kathy Reichs. She's saying medical suspense as sharp as it gets. I see what you did there, Kathy. I like it. Euliano is off to a good, no, a brilliant start. Congratulations on that rave review, joining Tess Gerritsen and Lee Child in singing your praises. Heather Graham also chiming in, raving Fatal Intent has an intriguing plot with wonderful twists and turns and all kinds of dangerous, devious, and frightening. A wonderful debut for this talented author. Congratulations on that rave from Heather Graham. Now, let's talk about that. First of all, let's talk about the twist. Are you a plotter? Do you plot it all out rigorously? Are you a pantser? You just go with the story? What's your process?
I'm evolving. When I first started writing, I quickly realized that I had no clue what I was doing, even though I love to read, and I'd written a ton of medical articles and even a medical textbook. starting from scratch with a blank page was very daunting to me. And so I started with one of K.M. Whalen's books on plotting, and it was very proscriptive plotting, 25% this needs to happen, 50% that needs to happen. And so initially, and for Fatal Intent, that's pretty much how I did it, was very much plotted. Since then, I'm, what you might call a plantser, right? I do a plot, but then I pants in between, and then I change the plot. And then, in fact, in the sequel Misfire, I changed the bad guy after I'd finished the whole book. I decided that I'd made it too obvious, so I changed bad guys and went back and put in a whole bunch of breadcrumbs and changed a bunch of stuff. So I'd probably be quicker if I was a better plotter, but I tend to plot out my main points and then sort of discovery right in between, and then sometimes the main points have to shift.
Let's talk about the second part of Heather Graham's review, saying that the all kinds of dangers, devious and frightening. So let's talk about the power that doctors have. You said at the beginning of the interview that end of life, how and when someone dies, is a question that you have been wrestling with. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, when I was a kid, there were a couple of different women who had been declared brain dead and were still being tube fed, and there was political arguments about what to do about it. And I remember I think I was in 5th grade, involved in a debate about what to do with Karen Ann Quinlan, whose family was disagreeing with the courts over her end of life. And it intrigued me in a 5th grade level way. And then when I started medical school, I had very strong feelings that you should just tell everybody you're going to pull the plug and they can come say goodbye and we'll pull the plug and be done with it. And I had a very black and white view. And then as I got older, I realized there was a lot more gray in between. But this whole idea that we spend a lot of money on people with who have a almost zero chance of survival, and we make the family make the call. And we've gone way away from physician paternalism, where we say, it's time, we need to turn things off and come say goodbye. And now we say, well, there's a 0.001 chance grandma might live. What should we do? And we make a family say, oh, let grandma die, right? So I think that's maybe not the best way to do things, and that it's very difficult for a family to understand what those statistics mean. And we're by nature going to grab onto hope, which is wonderful, but sometimes the odds are so incomprehensible that it's a very difficult and challenging question to ask someone. And I don't know the right answer. I'm not saying we should just take control and not let people make those decisions, but I think there needs to be a middle ground in there somewhere where we are more cognizant of the difficulties that we put families in. And so part of my goal with Fatal Intent and also with my website is to remind people that there are living wills that exist. There are durable power of attorneys that you should take care of, and you should have these conversations with your family about what you would like in the event that you can't speak for yourself, so that they're not making decisions and arguing about it. Right? And so if I've had this discussion with my husband where he says, you just make the decision, it's fine. But if I make one decision and the kids want a different one, then I'm the one making the decision, and it should be him making the decision and then me just following his wishes. So I encourage everyone, if you can just Google it, or you can look at my resources page on my website, which is just tyuliano.com. And there's some links to some resources for, it's all free. You don't have to pay anything for this, but you should have that document somewhere that your family will know whether you want tube feeds, whether you want to be on a ventilator for extended periods, at what point you would want different interventions.
This is fascinating, because I'll be honest, I've never thought about that for myself. And now I'm thinking I should think about that.
Unfortunately, even young people, these things happen. And when we had one happen where the wife, the mother and the father of the baby were not married. The mother became incapacitated, and the father wasn't able to make decisions about his unborn child because they weren't married. And so it was her parents that were making the decision, and they didn't like the boyfriend, and it became very ugly, and it didn't have to. If she had filled out a durable power of attorney and said he was the decision maker, then it would have been a much cleaner process.
Mm. Well, Dr. Tammy is sharing resources and information on her website. Everyone go check it out, and let's think through these tough conversations, these big, big decisions. And Nisa would like to know, ooh, good question. What genre of books do you read for pleasure? Yeah, so you said you joined a critique group where everyone is in the thriller genre. Do you also choose to read only the thriller genre, or are you reading those romance books that we were talking about earlier?
I read lots of mysteries and thrillers, but I do on occasion read a romance that one of my friends will recommend. I enjoy them mostly. Well, I enjoy them, period. But I try to learn from them, because the facial expressions and how you look into each other's eyes and that sort of stuff, I find very difficult to write. And so learning craft from romance, I think, is a great way to learn how to do some of that stuff. But mostly I read mysteries and thrillers. And then I try to alternate. I do a lot of audiobooks. And so I'll alternate a mystery thriller with something nonfiction, which my favorite book recently, in case you want to put a link to it, is called 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. It's called Time Management for Mortals is his subtitle. And it's about figuring out what's important in life and putting your time there, which sounds incredibly obvious, but he does such a remarkable job of emphasizing it in a sort of the opposite of all the other time management books you'll ever read, which are, do it now, answer all your email today. And his is like, if you answer the email, you're just going to get 5 more. So be choosy about what you answer. So I thought it was a terrific book. I read it twice in a row, which I never do.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to link that right here. Tammy's favorite book is 4,000 Weeks. Time Management for Mortals. So here is the link to it. Says she loved it so much she read it twice. Wow. Okay, perfect. So everybody, here's the link right here in the comments for all the platforms, no matter where you're watching. And I want to also remind y'all that Tammy's book, Fatal Intent, is out tomorrow in paperback. So grab your copy here as well. So I'm linking to Fatal Intent, the paperback. You can order it right here from Murder by the Book, our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. And the good folks at Murder by the Book will send it out to you tomorrow. So Tammy, I see that we are, oh my goodness, over our time. Is there anything that you wish I'd asked, anything you want to share with us?
Well, just one little thing is, so I was full-time physician, mom of 3, wife, and somewhere in my 20th year of being a doctor, somebody said every 10 years you need to reinvent yourself. And so I got to year 20. At year 10, I did some other things administratively. And at year 20, I said, you know what? I'm not a good administrator and it doesn't bring me joy. And we were on a hiking trip and I just decided that it was time. And I came home from my hiking trip and I I wrapped up all my administrative jobs, my research, and went down to 60% and became an author. So I just encourage people I really wish I'd done a better job of reinventing myself every 10 years. It's so easy to get into a rut of what you do and forget that there may be other things that you enjoy. And I just couldn't be happier now. I'm very blessed to have the support of my family and my parents to do this sort of crazy career that, I will never replace the salary that I'm giving up, but I don't care, right? I'm doing something I really love. So I encourage everyone to think about that and think about what else they might want to do with their lives. Because at some point the years are done and you need to jump on it while you can.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for all the hearts up on Facebook, fam. And Dr. Tammy, thank you for that advice. I love that. Every 10 years, you need to reinvent yourself. I absolutely love that advice. And I love that you actually did it. You implemented it. You said, this no longer serves me. I'm not going to do the paperwork anymore. I'm going to do what serves me. Ellen, not only saying such great advice. Yes. opening the possibility that we all have many more chapters left ahead, and that we have the freedom and the power to write them and embrace them and determine them. Wow, what a perfect note to end on. I'm also putting rave reviews from Hank Philippi Ryan and the Midwest Book Review here in the comments, because those are two more amazing rave reviews that you got. Anissa Joy saying, thank you so much for another great chat. Anissa, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Y'all, the paperback is out tomorrow. I'm going to put the link to in the comments one more time. Go ahead and order your copy. Thank you for all the hearts and likes. Wonderful advice for anyone. Catch a Clue says, watching from our private Facebook group, Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Thank you all for joining us. And Dr. Tammy, thank you for joining us. Everybody, be sure to pre-order the book tonight. Everybody, they'll send it out tomorrow. And then click over and join the Facebook group where all the good tea is spilled. We continue the conversation about this book and all the books you're reading. Everybody, thank you for another great Mystery Monday, because you know Mondays can be murder. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next Monday. Good night.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Tammy.